Say my name and my powers will flow through you. What? Say my names and my powers can flow through you. Shazam! This is the movie review to Shazam. Now, Shazam is a very good action-packed movie. It takes a strong blend of action and comedy, and they blend it in very nicely. It's not over the top. It's not so extreme. Normally, when you take a level of comedy with action, usually people complain that the movie is too comical and not enough action or enough seriousness. Now, Zach Levy, or should I say Levi, that's his last name, he did an outstanding job playing the grown version of Billy Baxter. Now, the movie begins with the villain as a little boy believing in magic, and there's a car accident that he himself caused. And you know how I do all my movie reviews, right? Spoiler alert. You gotta say it again. Spoiler alert. Let me say it again. Spoiler alert. And they're like, God damn, Max, why you keep saying spoiler alert? Because somebody works 5 days a week or 6 days a week. They probably ain't seen a movie in 4 months. And then when they get a chance to see a movie, they don't want the movie to get spoiled. So, spoiler alert. You've been warned. Spoiler alert. Anyway, he caused a car accident. Now, it fast forward to some years later, and we find out that Billy Baxter's backstory is that his father abandoned him. His mother's in an abusive relationship. She decides to abandon him, and he spends the next 10 years trying to find his mother. He runs away from foster home to foster home, and the way they set it up was perfect. He meets a kid that's, he's dyslexic and he's disabled. He doesn't want to be around anyone. And basically he just wants to find his mom. And he fights some bullies, and then he tries to get on a subway train that allows him to find his way under tunnel. Now, before all of that, Shazam was played by an actor named Sham. I'm impressed that he went from Fast and Furious to playing this character. It's unfortunate that his character only was in there in the beginning to give him his powers, and then that was the end of his story. He protected the Internal Rock. They, were corrupted by the magic, and he was the only one left, and he had to pick a champion not only to save Earth, but to stop the forces of evil. And it's funny because the way he would say Shazam to the boy was kind of like you could imagine if you were being picked to fight bad guys with superpowers. So I would probably call this a DC's version of Spider-Man Homecoming. And why I say that is because if you watch Spider-Man Homecoming, the movie, and you watch this movie, you see parallels that are very similar to this film. The way that in Spider-Man Homecoming was, you got powers, but you can't go back and tell anyone that you got these cool abilities. And it kind of was like this in a way where he needed a kid to help him understand all the abilities that he possessed. So in a way, it's kind of like Spider-Man all over again, but it's a DC version. Now, the fact that he gets these powers, that scene we saw in the trailer where he goes and begs him not to go tell, and then they go to the store, and they beat up the 2 bank robbers, and then he gets free stuff, even though he stole it technically. That was like the most funniest part of the movie, because you could imagine yourself trying to get some free stuff, but you're not legal yet. We all had that moment when we were a kid, and we wanted something that we know we're not supposed to get, and you have the power to turn into an adult, and you can get it. So it was perfect. Fighting didn't come until the midpoint of the movie. I like the fact that they immediately established that the kids were going to play a major part. At some part of the movie, you knew the villain was going to go back and get the identity of who he was. Now, Mark Strong's pretty perfect playing the villain roles. If you've seen Green Lantern, even though that's not a very good DC film, he was perfect playing the villain. In fact, he was intimidating at times in this movie. And there were times where they took the Guardians of the Galaxy route. If you've seen Guardians of Galaxy Volume 1, you can tell they took some inspiration from that movie where the villain is being made fun of. And people laughing at, you could imagine a kid with superpowers making fun of a villain. And a villain like, I'm going to destroy the world. Why are you not taking this whole thing serious? I'm mad. I want revenge. So you can imagine that. And the fact that when he does run into his mom, it's like there comes the emotion. Like they sneak the emotion into the middle of the film, and you're conflicted because, one hand, you're happy that he's got power, and on the other hand, you kind of feel bad that this guy, for 10 years, wanted to find his mom. And when he finds his mom, he finds her that she's moved on, she's in a new relationship, and he's not accepted by his mother, and that's got to be painful for somebody in the real world to have to look at this film and be reminded that, yeah, I felt that at one point. And then for you to try to give, people advice, they get picked on, they get bullied. Again, this movie kind of brings up, yeah, I remember when I got my ass whooped in junior high, high school, and then there's, I want the fame, I want the national attention, I want to be loved and praised. Again, this movie kind of brings in some personal feelings for you when you see this film. So you're able to relate to the idea of why someone like him would want to have power and seek attention and validation. Whereas in the real world, if you go to school or the gym or especially work, you feel like you're a ghost and don't nobody see you. But this movie clearly explains, if you had power, how could you change your destiny. So I would call this a destiny film, because basically we all want to change our destiny like how he did. And you see the consequences of having superpowers, obviously. Once he breaks the staff and fights all the demonic creatures, you could tell that whoever directed this knew what they were doing. They were able to not just bring in action and comedy. They were also to say, okay, it could be supernatural, it could be science fiction, we could bring in some type of horror, mix in some different genres all into one, and it blended in very well. You immediately know who the characters are. Now, the biggest payoff and surprise to me is when they were able to work in towards the end of the film, all the kids becoming the Sham family. The little black girl, she transforms. You find out it's Megan Good playing an adult version of that character, and you be like, oh shit, Megan Good's in this movie. Like, god damn. And then the fact that they have the Asian kid blow up and he's all swole and buff, and you're like, oh god damn. Like, I didn't think they would put that in the movie, and I think that was like a big payoff. Now, what really got you going, oh, I can't wait for a sequel, is the way they ended it, with him making his promise to the kid that he would show up to the high school and introduce himself to all the kids, and then to say I brought a special friend, and to see Superman show up, that's kind of like a nice teaser that if they made a sequel, it would make sense. So this movie gave you 2 end credits, and when you see the second end credit, it's end credited that there's going to be some magic magician that's going to probably be the biggest villain threat to the Sham family. So this movie immediately tries to make sure everyone gets a shot of the spotlight. It isn't just focused on the hero and the villain. Every character is getting some shine in this movie. So what do I rate the Sham film? I rate this movie a nice good 9 out of 10. Some people might say, why not 10 out of 10? This movie does have some flaws. It does take almost 2 hours for the action to come, and that's why it gets a 9 out of 10. Now, I do believe in a sequel, we'll see more fighting, more action, and less comedy. Think of the first Guardians of Galaxy Volume 1. A lot of complaints in that film was, there's too much comedy, not enough action. Same thing when people saw the first film of Venom. People complained that the movie was too funny and they wanted it to have some serious tone. And towards the end of that Venom film, it started to get serious. Same thing with Ant-Man. People were complaining that it's too comical. Where's the action? So I always say that the first film, it's always going to be most difficult. And then the second one, the sequels, is where you get more action in the film. So I give this a 9 out of 10, and I can't wait for this to come on DVD and watch the hell out of it again. Like, this movie kept me so entertained that I even begin to forget that I was an adult and go back to the moment when I was a kid. You know, don't worry about work. Don't worry about going to the gym. Don't worry about getting girls. Just go back to that classic moment when you're a kid and you have the purest joy. So this is my movie review. Peace.